on your Monday morning. Stack tabs and coffee chats. Talking DXP.
Welcome to another episode of the Matt and Matt Show. We are on location at Boye Company CMS Connect 2026 here in Montreal, Canada, or do we say Montreal, Quebec?
I think you can say
all of them, if you will. We're here with probably our first two guests ever, right, on our show, which, sorry, you're just learning that now, but I'm going to have our guests introduce.
Inaugural. My name is Kibilds. I am AVP of Marketing and Community at Simpson Scarborough.
And I'm Joyce Peralta. I'm Manager of Digital Communications at McGill University.
Thank you both for joining. So today's talk was, of course, all about AI and content management, but really AI more than anything. And I think, Day, you spoke a lot about simplicity of language in marketing, in higher ed, as you said. And Joyce, you're on the front lines of this every day. Joyce, can you just tell us a little bit about the stack that you employ at McGill and what your day-to-day is like?
So we have a large-scale Drupal multi-site installation. It has about 1,000 websites on it, another 500 custom websites, and we have about 1,500 people who create content in our ecosystem. So really large, really complex ecosystem. We are tracking how many edits we have per week, and it's 6,000 to 8,000 edits per week right now. So always evolving, large, complex. Well, we know that our audience members are starting to use AI more and more to access our content, but we are also recognizing that the outputs aren't always reliable. So we're having a lot of work. We're doing a lot of work right now to prepare our content to make sure that we're delivering more reliable outputs in AI, because we don't want to give people wrong information when they're looking to register or they're looking to complete requirements or figuring out how to register for a course. That would just be, I think, unforgivably frustrating. So we want to make sure that we're giving people a good experience when they're using AI.
Joyce, obviously we know each other, and you guys are both here in Montreal, right? Yeah. And I think you brought your dog this morning on the quick guided tour that we did. What does it mean to have higher ed as part of this conversation? And Dale, maybe kind of direct this towards you. You gave a really excellent presentation today on some grounded things that I think were important for us to hear as marketers, as people who are focused on the words. But what does it mean to have higher ed represented in this conversation? And what do you think are some of the challenges when you think about how AI is transforming things? What are the biggest challenges that you feel you face that made what you delivered today really relevant to us?
Anyone that works in higher education knows it's a very special industry. It's a very special sector. It's really important to society, right? So I think we're really proud to work in higher education. But from a technology point of view, AI at the moment, but any technology that has flourished over the past couple of decades, higher education is always a little bit behind. And in a way, I think that is a good thing because, these institutions are societal establishments. Like, they're really important and they need to move at a pace that is appropriate for something so important. But at the same time, I think for people like Joyce and I, it's a little bit frustrating because we get to come to these spaces and share with the innovators doing, retail online. And we're like, oh my God, I can't, we could never, because the faculty member this or the faculty senate that or the provost. And so I think the sweet spot that we have found is that we learn a lot from folks who are in other industries, and we try to implement and adapt that to ours. And for me, so I'm a marketer, and I live in the content world, and I love being in a place that's about what's the back end of that, what's the CMS, what's the data structure, what's the governance, because I usually see myself as a translator between my colleagues who do that and then the users who are going to be inputting content into these systems. And in higher education, I think the most difficult fight to fight is that because we are in academia, we feel like we have to be academic and things have to be complex and there are 1,000 rules for things and we have to uphold those. And it falls apart when you're trying to get people to register for classes or submit an application because it's too complicated. Our websites are too complicated. Our language is too complicated. So I usually focus on the basics, as you both shared. Because even though as an industry, it might be a little bit harder for us to innovate in terms of a tech stack. Not every school is McGill. We can edit the language. We can edit the words on the page, and that will go a long, long way to make our institutions more accessible to the folks who want to be there.
I think we read a lot in higher ed about a crisis, especially, across North America. I hear a lot in the US of schools closing down each week and the difficulties there. You're in a very large institution, though. Lot of constituents and stakeholders in the higher education world. And I wonder, do you feel those pressures, and does it affect how you go about communicating in your job and the ability to speak to that wide gamut of stakeholders and audience?
I think that I might feel more nervous if that was something that was new, but I feel like after a couple of decades now working in higher education, this is kind of par for the course for higher education. Things are constantly shifting in our industry. There's a lot of government regulation. There is a lot of considerations because this is a really important time in students' lives, and things have to work very well. And that pressure is something that is just part of the experience of working in higher education. And I know it kind of feels like things are a little more elevated now because maybe there was a little bit more space in between these moments a few years back. But overall, I don't think this is something that that's taking us by surprise. I think this is kind of something where, we're kind of battening down the hatches and doing what we need to do to make things work.
It's so great to have. I'm a fan of always trying to make space for open source and for higher ed. And I think the, sort of the mission-focused organizations that are clearly a part of what we're doing, they're part of the transformation. But Day, as you mentioned, I think, part of this is the perception, the idea that maybe higher ed and even public sector are laggards, right? They're far behind what's happening in the commercial space. Based on what you heard today, and again, you were part of this conversation, and I think gave us some really key advice. But what else stood out to you today in terms of actionable things that you feel maybe are coming from the commercial side? And I know that you guys are learning all the time from what's maybe happening with vendors and other tools in the ecosystem. And of course, you're staying on top of that. Doesn't mean you can always do it, right? For many of the reasons that you've already said. But I'd be curious, what you're taking away from today. Joyce has obviously been here before. You've been a participant with previous events. I think from the beginning, right? From the very first
CMS Connect?
Yeah. So obviously happening here in Montreal, and you've been here from the beginning. So I'm curious what you take away from today that you feel is actionable.
I was very impressed by a lot of the tools that I saw and a lot of the simplicity in which the presenters spoke about these different solutions and how they are, whether it is an actual product or it is a way that they handle a workflow or it is a way to think about some of the issues that might come up. I think higher education has a lot to learn from that. And so I loved the demos at the end where we had a few folks kind of showcase their products. And the one that really stood out to me was a chatbot. So we talked about a chatbot. And I know higher education institutions have been trying to implement chatbots, right, but they're just not good. It's not helpful. What I think frustrates me, and at the same time, these kind of conferences and shared spaces gives me hope, is that the solutions are already out there to help our students and any constituent get the information that they need in a way that they need it. And higher education just needs to look, really. So that I think it's implemented, like the solutions are out there. We just have to be open to implementing them is my greatest takeaway.
Joyce, so Matt and I speak all the time about this AEO, GEO. We make jokes, G.I. Joe, CIO, CEO, but it is the channel of the day, really, that's so used. Much like probably in the last 10 years, social, right, was the huge channel. And Google's always been there, but it was especially prevalent in probably the 5 to 10 years before that. Now, even though higher ed, government might be a little bit of laggards in potentially the use of a lot of the new technologies, a big constituent for you are students and younger folks. So do you find that answer engines are changing how you deliver content or how your audience is reaching you. And I mean, is there anything to share in terms of, are you able to see them applying to, through it, or just any kind of insights?
Absolutely. So we know from monitoring the way people are accessing our content that more people are accessing our content in AI, and we're seeing more conversions in AI. So we know that we need to be ready to make this shift. And I want to also tie this into what Day said, because I feel like coming to conferences like this has given me the inspiration and the ability to move forward on projects maybe sooner than other universities have. So the content model project, for example, that we're working on now, a lot of universities are interested in the work we're doing, because I haven't heard of another university that's trying to do an institution-wide content model project. If you are one, I'd love to hear from you.
heard it here.
So I feel like it's really important for us to be connected to industries outside of higher education, so that we get that forward-thinking kind of vision and a sense of how can we bring this back to higher ed and make this happen. And I think that's the main thing. Today, I saw a lot of people talking about how they've prepared their content for use in AI, for use in chatbots, and that's where we're at right now. We're looking to prepare our content, and I don't think we're too far. Like, TELUS, for example, mentioned they were just about to roll out their chatbot. We're also looking at that. We're also preparing our content. So I think that we are a little bit behind, but I don't think we're terribly far behind. And I think it's conferences like this that help me keep an eye on where the rest of the world is at.
Let's not say far behind. Let's just say that you're waiting for everyone else to prove it out first and work out the kinks, right? And last question, Day, and I think it's maybe a good place to end too. When we've talked about this through the lens of higher ed. Matt's brought up the specific sort of technology du jour of the day with AEO, GEO, and some of these practices. But and again, I'll go back to because I was a big fan of your talk today. Keeping things grounded, right? I wonder when you think about what you could leave our audience and what you could reflect back on and say, all right, here are things that I would advise you to think about, not just through higher ed, but maybe through that marketing lens, right? So maybe opening up a little bit more, because I mean, it's all marketing, right? So whether it's for higher ed or for other institutions, that's the key. So if you can leave us with a couple of maybe notes of wisdom, whatever you can conjure on the fly here would be great, but maybe some things inspired you on what you heard in the room today.
I was inspired to come up with this mental model in my head during one of the talks today. So I think of marketing as a very foundational kind of 3-step model. It's understand. You have to start by understanding your audience. You have to know what they need. You have to know when they need it and where they're going to go look for it. Understanding is the foundation. Then you build a strategy. And that strategy, that's where we get excited about when a new tool comes out or when, a different idea from your peers or competitors. That's exciting. It's exciting to be in that space. But when people jump straight there and skip understanding, then it doesn't matter how amazing the tool is, it's not going to work for you. From that strategy, then we make an offer. We offer to our constituents, to our audiences, here is a solution for the pain point or the need that you have. And based on whether they act on it or not, or how they behave around the offer, we understand. So it's like this 3-part model that is actually quite simple. And I think that is where I ground myself every single time with anything I make or anything I try to create or in any kind of talk that I do is who are we serving and why? What are we trying to understand? What are we trying to provide before we go and look at what we're going to implement? And I think that's how we keep ourselves not chasing the latest new thing. We should. We're curious. We're excited. But it's a different way to show these offers. But we cannot skip you have to know your audience and you have to know what they need.
I always like the saying, don't work for the technology, make the technology work for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the base principle you spoke here make a lot of sense. The marketing angles were great. We'll share a lot from that. But I think this was a great first attempt at some great guests in person. Dayana and Joyce, thanks so much for joining.
Challengers, wow, new entrants, they're mapping out the map. If it runs the web, they're running it down with Matt and Matt. Content tree, legacy, how this site survived.